Okay, so I am ready to jump into the export process. The first thing that I want to do is make sure that I'm happy with my naming conventions. So with this, I'm going to name this SM underscore wall, maybe wall A, and then the right side will be wall B. And I'm naming it SM for static mesh. This is very much a standard, so I'm doing SM underscore, not spaces, so underscore wall B. For this, I'll name it SM underscore pillar, and then SM underscore floor, which is what I did earlier. Now, the next thing that we need to do is some cleanup, so we want to make sure that we delete our history, which we can do right here, or we can go to Edit, Delete All by Type, History. And I also want to make sure that I have frozen my transforms for all of these meshes. And I can also do that here, modify Breeze transforms, or we can do this little hotkey right here. And we need to do that right here as well. I'm going to show you guys the game exporter. Now I'm not taking the character FBX into Unreal, so I'm just going to move this aside now. The other thing that I want to make note of is pivot placement. So again, I have my pivots where I want it, on my meshes where I want them. Now another thing about having my pivot where I've got it on this particular mesh is, when it rotates, rather than having it centered, it rotates kind of like a hinge. I prefer that for wall pieces. So now that I'm ready to export these pieces out, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just shift select these. I'm going to show you guys how to use the game exporter and why it's also awesome. I think this is in the wrong group. So I'm actually going to just drag this guy out. This is for a different video. So I've got my wall, my floor, pillar, and then my wall B. So wall A, wall B, floor, pillar. So I'm just going to shift select all of these, and I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to use the game exporter, which is not currently visible. So if your game exporter is not currently here, we probably need to add this into the plugin. So this is useful. So I'm going to go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, and let's see if I can find that game exporter. And so all I did was I typed in game, and we want this game FBX exporter. So I'm going to load, auto load, just going to hit refresh, close. So now if we go to File, now we have that game exporter. So I'm going to click Game Exporter. In this window, this is very important, so make sure that you are following this very specifically. So we don't want to export all. What this is, if export all is left on, it's going to literally export everything in the scene. That's not what I want. I want export selection. I don't need smoothing groups. I don't necessarily want to triangulate it quite yet. The engine is going to do that for me. This is just a blockout. So I also want to emphasize with a blockout, we're just focused on scale and proportions. Notice that I don't have really any major silhouette detail in here. I've got a little bit of silhouette detail happening with the floor, but for the most part, everything is just very blocky. Now we don't have any skinning, we don't have any blend shapes, tangents and binormals, we'll keep that on for now. Settings. We don't want to export this to a single file, we want them to have their own multiple files. Now I already named this SM underscore, so I already gave it a prefix. And actually I'm jumping the gun. Let's go back up to settings. The other important part of this is we want to make sure move to origin is checked on. This is going to ensure that our pivots are going to come in the correct place on our assets. If I build, for example, my entire scene here, just kind of testing things out, let's see, so I'm just going to shift, let's do Command D, and I'm just going to kind of just build a little hallway here. Looks like it went over. It sure did. There we go. Do I have this not set up? There we go. Let's see. This is in a weird place. There we go. There we go. Okay, now this is matching up. So that's another important part about testing out your blockout. Make sure your pieces are matching up. So, like I was saying, I want to export these to multiple files so that way I have a single file for my wall A, wall B, my pillar, etc. Now I'm only going to bring in one version of this, even though I have, these multiple pieces where I'm just kind of testing out my scene to see, kind of how it feels. I'm only going to bring in one version. So again, I'm going to have the pieces that I want to bring in selected. I don't need all of these. I'm going to duplicate them around in Engine. So I'm going to set this up to export multiple files. I'm going to have move to origin. And this is going to physically behind the scenes move my mesh so that my pivot is at the origin. If I don't do this, it's going to come in with the pivot still at the origin, but not move the model. And you can imagine, I'm sure, how much of a nightmare it is going to be to have to try to assemble something like this in Unreal. Now, if you bring this into Unreal and you find that it's not working, you likely didn't have your settings set up properly. It's very important that you have your pivot placement where you wanted, that you've deleted your history, you've frozen transforms, that you have export selection on here, you have move to origin, export to multiple files. So these are all very important settings to make sure that you have. So I'm going to set this FBX version to 2016-2017. I've not had any issues with 2018, but currently Unreal's documentation says that it supports 2016-2017, so I'm going to make sure that I follow suit with that. Now the path, this is where do you want to save your, your files. So for now, I'm just going to put it on my desktop. Actually, I'm going to put it in 2019 assets. Why not? So I'm just going to do a new folder, and I'm going to call this static meshes. You guys can call it whatever you want, but this is where I'm going to save mine. Now, had I not put the prefix in here, had I just left this at wall A, wall B, pillar, etc., then I would type SM underscore, and then it would name everything SM underscore wall, SM underscore pillar, etc. If I leave it like this, it's going to do SM underscore pillar. I don't want that. I've already named my stuff SM. So I don't need to put that prefix in. However, if I had just named this wall A or wall B and I put SM at the beginning, then it would have named this SM underscore wall B, wall A, pillar, etc. So again, make sure that you have these settings done correctly. This will ensure that when you import into Unreal, it will be correct. So again, export selection, smoothing group, sure, tangents binomial, sure, all that's fine. But the important parts here, export selection, export to multiple files, move to origin, FBX version 2016-2017, and then placing it, at your preferred location. So we're going to hit export, and it's going to say, yay, you did it. So in the next video, we will go over the project creation portion of it, and then I will show you kind of an overview of my in-game meshes, and then talking about how we will then replace those blockout pieces inside of Unreal. So see you then.